Let me introduce my three guests this morning. Jim Rogers is an investment guru and chairman of Rogers Holdings. He recently said, "I hate to say it, but I wouldn't put any money into the UK." Murad Chowdhury is the head of Treasury at the Europe Arab Bank. And I'm also joined by Paul Abberley, Chief Executive and Chief Investment Officer of Aviva Investors, where he oversees $98 billion in assets. Jim, if I can start with you, we're expecting those GDP numbers in just under 1 hour's time. The consensus is for a drop of 1.2%. How bad is it going to get for the UK economy, Jim?
Well, Mark, I don't pay too much attention to government figures. Mainly, they're usually incorrect, and the rest of them are always lies. So that's not a way to get good investment advice. The recession is here. Anybody who doesn't understand that should just walk out and look out onto the street, and they'll see the recession. It's here. It's going to be the worst since the Second World War. And if politicians keep bungling it, it's going to be worse than that.
Murad, worse since Second World War. Are politicians bungling it?
I'm not sure if it's necessarily the worst since the Second World War. It's certainly bad. We didn't need any official confirmation to know that, as Mr. Rogers has just said. We are in recession. The High Street confirms it. All the figures confirm it. And I would say that it's bad. I wouldn't want to necessarily say it's the worst since the Second World War. I mean, certainly it's worse than 1990-91. It may well be as bad as 1980-81. It could get back to the 70s when we were on a three-day week. However, we're not quite there yet, so I'm going to hold fire on whether it's the worst since 1974.
Are you going to hold fire? Put your view on the table, Paul.
Well, I think it's a little unfair for the politicians to be blamed for acting far too slowly. They have acted. Perhaps they could have done better. But the key thing is they are doing something. And for that reason, while this is surely going to be more protracted than a lot of the optimistic forecasts, it's still unlikely to get as bad as periods like World War II or the 1930s or the hyperinflation of the 20s.
Jim, the politicians have acted.
Wait. What they're doing is the wrong...
Go on, Jim.
So what they're doing is the wrong thing. If you remember, in 1929, we had a bubble, stock market bubble, which burst, and then we were going to have a recession, and then the politicians around the world kept making mistakes, and they turned it into the Great Depression and then the Second World War. The politicians this time are making the same kind of mistakes.
You don't agree with that, Murad?
Not entirely, no. I would say, actually, if up to a point they're actually doing quite the right thing insofar in the way they're looking to support banks, the way they're looking to pump money into the economy, you know, the various fiscal stimuli packages that have been discussed. I would say that actually they're not entirely as close-minded as the politicians in the 1930s were. And in fact, they've acted a lot quicker with regard to monetary policy. We're about to see packages in fiscal policy. And you know, we have seen various packages of other measures to support banking and to try and get credit again. I mean, there's probably one or two other things they could do, but, you know, they're on the right lines.
Gentlemen, hold your thoughts. Back to you in just a few seconds. Jim, I'm going to start with you, as Nigel was referring to your comments made here on Bloomberg earlier this week. I mean, you're painting pretty much an Armageddon scenario for the UK, Jim. Is it really that bad?
Well, Mark, the world's not going to end this week or this month, this year even, maybe not even this decade, but the UK doesn't have much to sell to the world anymore. The North Sea is drying up, according to your government. The City of London, the financial system, according to your government, is a disaster. What else is there to sell? Your balance of trade is going to continue to deteriorate, and therefore the pound sterling is going to be under pressure. You have stupendous debts, international debts and domestic debts. I don't like saying it. It's not any fun saying it, but we have to deal with facts.
And Jim, we've got a man here who says that your comments lack logic as well as analytical robustness. Let's get Murad to back his view up.
Morning. Hello. Let's take the 2 points there. We've got nothing more to sell. I'm not entirely sure that's the case, balance of trade. But before that, let's go to the fact that the public sector deficit. I mean, the FX rate, sterling vis-a-vis other currencies, is coming under pressure because of foreign investors, foreigners, not UK domestic, worried about the growing public sector deficit. So, in fact, it makes sense for them to come out of sterling assets. But if you look at developed countries, and certainly compared to the Eurozone, our public sector deficit, even taking into account what we've got with the various government support schemes that the government's announced, is a lot lower as a percentage of GDP than Eurozone and most developed countries. As a problem with public sector deficit, then actually the UK looks quite good. As a store of value, sterling is going to come under pressure as foreign investors decide they don't want to hold UK-denominated assets. But that doesn't necessarily mean a weak currency means we're going to the worst recession since 1931, etc., etc. It makes sense for foreign investors to maybe rebalance the state of our assets. However, that doesn't mean we don't have any goods to sell. We patently do. I think Rolls-Royce said to have a problem with that statement, as indeed a lot of provider of services, the pop music industry. And also the fact is that rebalancing, as we heard in the other quote, makes sense during this time. There is some upside to a weak currency as well with regard to exports. Again, we've had a comment on that in your quotes. So it's not entirely the fact that the weak currency means we're heading for the worst thing ever. There's a lot of nonsense spoken on FX rates.
Jim, there's a lot of nonsense speaking on FX rates.
Do you really maintain that Rolls-Royce is going to offset the North Sea? Do you maintain that the Beatles are going to offset the City of London? Sir, look at the numbers. What are you talking about?
I am looking at the numbers. The fact is, there's a lot of scaremongering. The statement that the UK is bankrupt or sterling is finished. Sterling has been around since the 8th century. You know, it'll be around. I mean, the comment that Armageddon isn't going to come this week or next week or next year. Try the next 100 years. Sterling is going to be around for a lot longer. I think a lot of this scaremongering doesn't add value because it doesn't actually paint any value-added statement on the state of the economy. It doesn't tell us about the state of the economy, which is under a lot of pressure. We're in recession. And it doesn't tell us about the value of sterling, its real value.
I want to get Paul involved, gentlemen. Paul, which side?
If you want to talk about the last 100 years, the pound sterling was $5 100 years ago. Now it's $1.50. That's been going down for 100 years.
And it was $1 in 1985, and now it's $1.39. I'm sorry, this is the markets. Yeah, this is the market. These are market. Yeah, these are the markets.
It's a three-way discussion, Jim. Wait there, Paul. Which side of the fence are you on?
Well, if you ask a group of people to write down a list of reasons why you shouldn't buy the pound or the dollar or the euro, they'd be scribbling wildly. If you ask that same group to come up with good reasons to buy each of those, they'd be tapping the pencil on the desk. There's a lot in what Jim says about the pound, but you can also make a similarly bad case for the euro or for the dollar. And one of the problems in the currency markets at the moment is they're shuttling between the three, trying to work out which is the worst story, and probably defaulting onto interest rate differentials.
Gentlemen, stay there. Just got to come back to you in a few seconds' time. Paul, straight to you. It's all about the credit markets, isn't it? It's all about the bank's willingness and availability to lend. Until we fix that question mark's not going to be answered, is it?
Yes, absolutely. The property markets are clearly frozen, so we have no price discovery at the moment. I don't think anyone really knows what the equilibrium level of property prices are, other than to say it's certainly lower. You'd have to assume